Consider your feet. Think about them. I don't think we give our feet enough credit. When St. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians that every member of the body has its own purpose, that the ear can't say, because I am not an eye, I don't belong to the body. He is saying that every part of your body plays an important role, and every part of every part is critical. And so it is with the foot. The lowly, forgotten, smelly, dirty, misshapen foot. You should love your feet more. And I know you don't love your feet. You're ashamed of them. How do I know that? Maundy Thursday. Maundy Thursday. Every year, the Thursday of Holy Week, Christians, and especially Episcopalian Christians, are invited to come forward and to wash someone else's feet and to have their own feet washed. And if I really, really try, if I make a big deal over it, I might get 40, maybe 50 of you to do that. Some will come up with abandon and humility, which is what it's all about, really. Humility. But most of you will hang back, not because you don't want to wash somebody else's feet, but because you don't want to let anybody else see or touch your feet. You're ashamed of them. Shame on you. Your feet have done so much for you. You know what? Your feet are beautiful. I've seen them, at least 40 of them. I guess 80. But your feet are beautiful. They're miraculous, really. I looked it up. Each foot has 26 bones. And you know what? If you combine them together, that's what? 52 bones. And that is 1/4 of all the bones in your body are in your feet. 1/4 of all your bones are in your feet. Each foot has 33 joints, over 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments, plus a network of blood vessels, nerves, skin, and soft tissue. They give us balance. They propel us forward. They take a beating, literally. In a 1-mile run, the feet withstand several tons of pressure. Can you imagine? I mean, way to go, God. You know, that was really good design, wasn't it? Way to go. That's amazing, I think. Amazing work, God. Good job. Now, Paul writes in today's lesson to the Romans, quote, "How beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news." Who brings you good news? Postal workers, if they bring a check. Lab technicians. Delivery nurses. UPS drivers. Neighbors with abundant gardens. Payroll clerks. And Paul says even preachers might bring good news. I doubt that I would ever be asked with these to be a toe ring model. But you know what? My feet have served me well all these 62 years. I'm not sure I love them, but I'm pretty proud of them, really. They've done a good job, right? How about your feet? Have they done a good job? In Romans, excuse me, Paul, who is a Jewish Christian, or Christ-following Jew, is writing about this tricky theology wherein he proclaims Christ as the Messiah who welcomes all, Messiah for everyone, without negating the special and covenantal relationship that just the Jews have with God. So he's trying to balance those two things. And believe me, it's a complicated argument. Only Paul, I think, could have written it. It's brilliant, really. And in this section of Romans, Paul says that everyone who calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved. But then admits that there are lots of folks who have never heard the name of the Lord, so how can they call on the name of the Lord? And then we get this part, which is textbook rhetoric, which is classic Paul. He says, quote, "But how are they to call on one in whom they have not believed? And how are they to believe if one in one of whom they have never heard? And how are they to hear without someone to proclaim him? And how are they to proclaim him unless they are sent? As it is written, he says, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. Okay, now put a pin in that for a minute. I'm coming back to that. But before we come back to that, I want to talk about some other feet we heard about this morning. Jesus' feet. What do you suppose they look like? Dirty, misshapen, ugly? Was he missing toes? Was his toenails all crooked and mangled and nasty? No, I bet they were beautiful. Don't you imagine Jesus had the most beautiful feet ever? I do. This familiar story of Jesus walking on the water, this great story of Jesus coming out to the disciples on the water. There are three groups of characters in this story. There are water walkers, boat rockers, and shoreline stalkers. Right? Water walkers, boat rockers, and shoreline stalkers. In reverse order. The crowds on the shore are driving Jesus crazy. They're hounding him. For what? Not for his words, not for his teachings, not even his promises. They're hounding him for his healings. He's healed. And they're like bringing everybody, hey, wait a minute, I'm sick, so sick. Please, somebody stay at home, pray for them. His healings. And they're surrounding him, they're hounding him. And his mission is being swamped and stalled by folks who are running to him, clamoring for his healing. And he's a victim of his own success, really. And in this section, he's really just trying to get off by himself to pray. It's one of two times that he's trying to get off by himself to pray alone. So he sends his disciples out in the boat and heads off to the mountain to pray alone. But then a storm so powerful that the disciples can't even make it across. The wind is working against them. Their boat is tossed and turned, and they're holding on, I imagine, for dear life. And then Jesus walks on his feet on the water to them. And then Peter beckons, believes, bolts from the boat, and his feet actually carry him part of the way to Jesus. But because he is human and not the Messiah, he falters in both faith and footwork. But nevertheless, Jesus saves all, and Jesus saves him too. And so we are left to ask the question, should Peter have gotten out of the boat at all, or should he have stayed put? We are not God. Like, never confuse that. Like, if you leave here and move somewhere else, always remember Father Mark said this, you're not God. Like, that's important in Scripture, right? You're loved by God, created by God, but we're not God. So we cannot walk on the water. We cannot heal the sick. We cannot save the world. We cannot even save ourselves from ourselves. We should stick together in the boat, in the church. But why then do we have feet? Why don't we just have extra comfortable seating pads back here? Why do we even need feet if we're just to stay in the boat? In 1966, a 26-year-old English woman named Jackie Pullinger used her feet to step off a boat in Hong Kong with no one there to greet her and a total of $10 to her name and a heart for missionary work. She found her life's vocation living and serving and walking among the most desperate people in the city. Her ministry was working with drug addicts, prostitutes, and gang members. 24 years later, is that right? 14 years later, in 1980, she wrote a book about her experiences called Chasing the Dragon. And in 1989, another book called Crack in the Wall. And who knows how many times Jackie Pullinger's feet carried her into situations that were immensely dangerous and unimaginably heartbreaking, working amongst the poorest of the poor, prostitutes, drug addicts, gang members, violent situations, seriously difficult situations. Now, I know almost nothing about her life, but 20 years ago, someone told me this quote from Jackie Pullinger, and I have never forgotten it. Speaking of the hard truth of the Gospels and the rigors of missionary work and evangelism, just like Paul said, Jackie Pullinger said this. She said, God wants us to have soft hearts and hard feet. The trouble with so many of us is that we have hard hearts and soft feet. Sounds like Jesus to me. Sounds like Paul to me. How beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. Who needs to hear some good news? How will they hear it? Where are they? I guarantee you that right now, today, there are lots of people who need to hear good news within walking distance of this place.